Hi everyone, welcome to the first lecture of the course. I just want to briefly go over some of the main points from both last week's reading as well as this week's reading, because when I was putting them together, I really wanted to set a good foundation for some of the key concepts that are going to help us along as we get further along in the semester. So let's go ahead and get started. So in week one, we read the introduction to the Chicano Handbook. But more importantly, we read the final chapter of Gloria Anzaldua's seminal piece on Borderlands. It was originally published in 1987, so that should contextualize some of the language and some of the concepts she was using, as well as some of the major arguments she was making. There are a few major points that I want to bring up about that particular piece. So first, Ansaldúa was a feminist lesbian, or a lesbian feminist, I should say. So much of her work was radical given the oppressive culture that she was kind of up against. Second, as you noticed, unlike the handbook, she doesn't take the time to translate the Spanish that she uses. In her mind, what she wanted to do was educate the masses and inform them of the mestiza ideology, but that didn't mean that she was going she wasn't going to cater to that particular audience exclusively and provide those translations. In that moment, she's prioritizing her people and the language of her people. So she's putting the onus for folks who want to be, allies, or even more so. Like, there's this idea of being more than an ally and being an accomplice, right? Like being there in the front lines and putting your body there with other people for their equal treatment. That if you really want to do that, you will take the time and you will. It doesn't mean you have to learn all the Spanish or learn every single word, but that you'll take the time, and that if she's using a particular word for a particular reason, that you'll go figure out what that word or what that phrase means, especially when there are so many words in the Spanish language that don't have a really true good translation into English. Okay. Lastly, in her discussion of the in-between and the mestiza consciousness, that ideology is critical for this course, right? She goes to great lengths to talk about the psychology, the sociology, and the basic tenets of consciousness. She even makes various comparisons and using different metaphors. Like, she likens indigenous people to corn, right? It's a product of crossbreeding, designed for preservation under a variety of conditions. Understanding this continual struggle of not being enough for one group, but being too much for another group, is critical as we start conceptualizing what we must be and what we must do as leaders. Now, moving on to the second week of class and the second batch of readings that we have. If we consider what it means to be and live and work on the border, it is impossible to divorce Mexico from the U.S., and in turn, it is crucial to include and learn the cultural implications and contributions of Mexico and its people. Right? These readings highlight the fact that the perspective and history of Chicanas and Chicanos is often not considered and typically left out of many history books. And at the very least, they'll briefly go over some of these contributions, or they won't provide the true contextual information that's necessary to really understand that impact, right? So McField focuses her attention on language and how we see the fear of English overtaking Spanish. It really allowed key players in government to prioritize emotion and feelings over what would be best suited to address a critical need on the border. More importantly, she addresses the fact that race, and specifically skin color, played a big role in access to and the quality of education. Now, I use the readings for week one and week two to highlight one critical aspect we have to cover in order to better situate our mindset as we move forward in this course. So, while there's a lot of discussion about the relationship between Mexico and U.S., there's heated debates about what the U.S. should do about immigrants and immigration. But regardless, the land, the culture, and the people along the border are truly unique, right? In terms of the relationships, patterns, implications, contributions, all of that. From the history up until now, it is truly a unique situation. I've seen people who've grown up here their whole lives move to other parts of the country and suffer culture shock in a way that other people don't, because of the fact that this land and these people here, it's just so radically different, because it really does feel like this quilt made up of all these different people coming from all these different countries. Because I know we're focusing on U.S. and Mexico, but there are so many people, different cultures, and a lot of them were primarily of Latin descent, But all of these different peoples and cultures come here, and they meld together and they work together, and so it's impossible to separate those things, right? The different countries that are a part of this particular area of land and this group of people, you just can't separate them. They come together and create this physical and metaphorical in between, like Ansaldua talked about. And the people along the border are a result of, and they're informed by that in between. So really take some time if you had to kind of briefly go through it to kind of understand what we were talking about or to answer the discussion post. I really suggest you focus in and try to really get some like the main concepts from last week's reading as well as this week's readings. And then, like I mentioned in the intro video, if there are some words you don't know, I would make a note of it and try to see if you can go and get the translation and figure those words out so you can really have a true understanding of what these authors are trying to get at. But that's all I have you for this week. So again, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to drop by during my office hours or shoot me an email. We can figure out another time for us to meet and talk.